We will call to order the meeting of the Freeport Project Review Board, August 16, 2023. We do have a quorum. Absent is Linda Berger.
I found this on the web.
Your order's ready.
ChatGPT.
No, for the Project Review Board. My Siri on my watch just looked up Freeport Project Review Board. The Jim Monteleone is not presently, and Linda Berger is excused. So we do have a quorum. And Caroline, can you give us a staff update?
Sure. Sorry, it's been a while since I've been on this end of Zoom. So under info exchange, we'll start with the planning board. As you know, the planning board has been putting a lot of time into talking about the new state regulations, more popularly known as LD 2003, and starting to look at what the impacts are going to be to Freeport. They just held a community workshop to give the public an opportunity to ask questions and hear some of the concerns or comments from the public. You'll probably hear me reporting on this monthly between now and January, which is when municipalities are supposed to have these changes in the books. And Freeport, we anticipate, will require amendments to the zoning ordinance, the subdivision ordinance, and the shoreland zoning ordinance. Next up on your agenda would be an update on the Downtown Division Task Force. That group did have a meeting. We talked about some grant programs, one of which the council has approved and had previously allocated some funding. There's a new business fit up grant program that's going to be coming out. It has $60,000 allocated towards it. FEDC is overseeing it, but it's going to award funds for people to enhance their businesses or enhance spaces that are not utilized so they can activate it. They could apply for funding for utility connections, accessibility improvements, or required code updates that they haven't been able to make. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Next up is the Climate Action Plan. We continue to work with GBCOG on this. We have had a little bit of a delay. One of the things that Freeport needs to do is set some carbon reduction targets for the community. The Sustainability Committee is going to be going to the council, I believe, in September with some recommendations and to give an understanding of what that would mean for Freeport. When we have more information on the date of that, I'll share it with the board in case you are interested in participating. Once that's done, we'll see a little uptick in the work on the plan. We'll start to see some draft text, and there'll be another community workshop, I believe, tentatively scheduled for October. And then finally, I wanted to give you an update. At the August 1st Town Council meeting, the Town Council was presented with some recommendations from the Freeport Housing Task Force. That's a group that had been put together and appointed by the council to look at housing in Freeport and make some recommendations of things we could do while we have other projects going on to encourage housing in Freeport, and I think, you know, also some affordable housing in Freeport. That group did make a series of recommendations. The council didn't really take public comment at the meeting. It was the first time it was introduced. So they did set a community workshop just to get some feedback from the community on the 5 recommendations presented. That workshop is tentatively set for August 22nd. It will be held at the Freeport Community Library. We know it's a really busy time of year for people, but the hope was that planning board members, project review board members, council and housing task force can all be there to share their thoughts and hear ideas, and then also hear from the members of the public. And that's all I have under information exchange for you.
Thank you. Does anyone from the board have any questions for Caroline about any of those items, including the report of the Housing Committee? Okay. I've spoken with the chair of the planning board today, Carolyn, as I told you I intended to do. and he and I will be at that meeting on the 22nd, and I encourage anyone else who has thoughts to either be there or share them with Caroline, and you'll get them to the council before the meeting, right, Caroline?
Yes, happy to. If they want to send me email comments. And we did ask if you do plan on coming, just RSVP and let the town clerk know. We want to set up the room accordingly with microphones. If you can't make it, reach out to your counselor or reach out to me, let me know your thoughts. Happy to share them on your behalf.
Tell how does this meeting was set with a week's notice? How does that get broadcast to the public?
So they, some people knew if you were watching the August 1st council meeting, they set this as a special workshop at that meeting. The delay of getting more notice out was actually finding a space to hold a meeting at that point in time. So the council typically puts out their agendas the end of the week before, so like the Thursday before. In this case, we had circulated it in advance of that to Planning Board, Project Review Board, and the Housing Committee. But some people were there watching the initial presentation, and so I think Board has also gotten up that way.
Thanks, Caroline. We have the minutes from the July 19, 2023 meeting, which are before us. Does anyone have any suggested changes or questions about those minutes?
Not for me.
Is there a motion to approve them as presented?
So move.
Second?
We have to do a roll call vote because everybody at the meeting is not present in this room. Donahue?
Yes.
Hamlin?
Yes.
Madeira?
Yes.
Reiki, yes. Yankee?
Yes.
The minutes are approved, and the first active item on tonight's agenda is 48 Bow Street for design review certificate and continuation of the process for a demolition permit request. Caroline, can you give us some more background on this?
Before that, I have to say that I'm going to recuse myself from this item, just
Okay.
like last time. But I'm going to stay right here.
So Jason is recusing himself. Let me make sure we still have a quorum. Caroline, you want to give us some background on the two matters related to 48 Bow Street?
Sure. So the applicant was before you last month. I really remember they have an old barn/garage on the property that they're looking to demolish. They also want to install a new structure. Because it's Class B and design review, the 4-month notice. Because that determination was made at the last meeting, the applicant has since run the first ad in the Times record. I did also set this up as a public hearing, so you could take public comment. You need to open and close the formal public hearing tonight. So there's really two parts to this application. One is the new structure, which, the board talked about at the last meeting. I think we made some comments pretty favorably towards the design. So the applicant has provided some additional details, and we set that up. If the board wanted to take action on the new structure, they could do that. There would be a condition that the applicant could not apply for any permits until the 4-month notice period has been deemed complete, or in case the building had also been saved. Again, the 4-month notice period is designed to allow the opportunity for someone to come in and take a building, save a building, salvage a building, or sometimes at least for the historical society or other people to come in and document that structure. If someone has interest in the building and the applicant works out something with them sooner than the 4 months, that would save the structure. They have the ability under the ordinance to come back to you sooner. So at this meeting, you could act on the building design for the design review certificate with a condition. As far as the demolition request, you typically would table it until the requirements of the 4-month notice period have been complete. So two parts to this. Happy to answer questions.
And Caroline, am I correct that the applicant has to come back to us at the end of the 4-month period?
Yes, I did get some clarification of the town attorney. That is how she reads it too. So we would have them come back as soon as they can when the 4-month mark hits. So that 4-month clock starts today. So they'd be looking at anytime December 16th or after, they could come back to you for you to take action as long as they ran the legal ads, which they're required to do. We did send notification to the council and the planning board and the historical society as well. And the applicant's aware they have 2 more ads that they need to run.
But if the applicant goes through the required process and comes back before us, it has to be approved by us if they've followed the process. Is that correct?
Yeah, you don't have the ability to deny the demolition of a structure if the requirements of the 4-month notice period have been met.
Okay.
And again, this is only for Class A and B. Class C structures don't have this notice period.
And as information for the public and reminder for the board, I think we asked you to come back tonight so that if we're inclined to grant your approval for the new building, you are then free to, if you want to go ahead and order your windows or line up your contractors, you can, knowing that there's whatever the element of risk is on the 4 months.
It's all
passing.
contingent on the December 16th date.
Okay.
Yeah. I guess the only thing I would like clarification of, I do have one person, and we're playing telephone tag now, but generally, he's seen the building. There are parts of it that are salvageable, but the building itself will need to be broken in pieces in order for him to repurpose the salvageable parts of it. It won't go down the road as it is. It's 20 by 20 and rickety. So I guess my question is what's your definition of salvaging the building versus repurposing bits and pieces of the building? I'm not sure where to go with the conversation with him. And then how do I present that to you if he's suggesting, well, we could take it apart, put it on a flatbed, and then once we get it to standish, go through it and repurpose what we can. What is the burden of proof or a contract or agreement that needs to be presented to you in order to meet the requirement?
Caroline, you want to answer that? You want me to do it?
Yeah, you can take it if you want, or we can pull up the ordinance as well.
The ordinance while I give a beginning of an answer. The 4-month process is to encourage you to have those types of discussions.
Okay.
And if somebody else in the meantime steps forward and says they'll take the whole building or something like that, it's an opportunity to perhaps have a second opportunity. Caroline, but there is a chance that this, if he works out an arrangement for removal of the building, it shortens the 4-month process. Is that right?
Yeah, so there is number 3 on the screen. I hope you can see it. Negotiation to avoid demolition during the 4-month period. The board can negotiate with the owner of the property and with any other parties in an effort to find means of preserving. Such negotiations may include relocation to a new site, recommendation for historic easement in accordance with the ordinance, adaptive reuse of the structure, or third parties who might want to purchase it for preserving. And the board can issue a permit to remove a building prior to the expiration if provisions have been made to move it for the purposes of preserving it. So I think he'd have to come back with information on what parts he's going to preserve. I think he did, the property owner who's there can comment. He did look a little further at the structure to understand what the existing condition is, and then he shared it was unlikely that it would be able to be moved to its entirety due to its current condition.
It seems like all of the steps that could shorten up your 4-month period require keeping the building looking like a building and not breaking it down for parts.
All right. Okay.
So trying to move this forward for you, but
I appreciate that, but yeah,
we're going to have a public hearing. Do you have any other questions or information before we start that? And you can come back up afterwards if you want to.
no, not at all. Thanks. Appreciate it.
Is there a motion to open?
There's Jim. Just kidding.
Oh, hi, Jim. Caroline, can you email Jim and just tell him how to connect with us? We have going to have a public hearing. We have to open that by motion, and then we'll close it by motion. Is there a motion to open a public hearing for the demolition permit aspect of the building at 48 Bow Street.
So moved?
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Roll call vote. Donahue?
Yes.
Hamlin?
Yes.
Madeira?
Yes.
Monteleone?
You're on mute?
We don't need him for the quorum. He's not really with us yet. Reiki, yes. Yankee?
Yes.
Okay, so we open a public hearing. Are there any members from the public who'd like to be heard on the demolition permit for 48 Bow Street?
Hi, Eric Smith, Freeport Historical Society. We appreciate the process that you all are following to allow us the opportunity to work with the building owner. It is our intention, although we have not reached out to you yet, we are working on that, to photograph the building and to document it as well as we can. What we know about the building briefly is that it has been there quite some time. It may not be quite as old as the house, which is 1790, but it's probably close to that. Was probably a shop used for multiple places, so less of a barn and more of a work building. So it may have some unique characters that we would like to document. But our other intention would be, based on that look ourselves, to hopefully try to reach using our own audience to help find a home for it, with the hope that perhaps someone in Freeport might be interested in taking it. And of course, the shorter the distance it goes, the easier it is to move, although I recognize that the state may make it quite difficult to move. So we will be in touch with the landowner and do the best we can to help move this along. Thanks.
Do you get the impression that it's post and beam frame?
I have only seen photos of the outside that were part of the submission. I haven't actually seen the inside.
There was some confusion at the meeting last week. I think your builder thought that it was 2x4 frame, and I went by it. It kind of looked, you could believe it's timber frame. Be helpful maybe to see some photos, but I'm glad,
Yeah.
it's good you folks are on this. And
Yeah.
It just helps the process.
Front door's falling off, so you can go in and.
We do like to get permission before we do it.
So you
Please do, the sooner the better.
You folks will engage outside of the meeting as part of this process. Any other members of the public wish to be heard on this? Carol, I'm going to close the public meeting if that's okay. Is there a motion to close the public hearing on 48 Bow Street demolition permit?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Donahue?
Sure.
Hamlin?
Yes.
Madeira?
Yes.
Monteleone?
Abstain after the partial
Oh, and yes, you're,
participation on this matter.
I'm sorry, and Reiki? Yes. Yankee?
Yes.
Okay, public hearing is closed. We do have the option to ask the applicant any other questions about the design review certificate for the proposed building. It was reviewed and I think generally approved by the board at the last meeting. Do you have any changes in the proposal?
Not a thing.
Does anyone from the board have any additional questions related to the design review certificate for the new building?
No, so what we're voting on tonight is the design of what he was proposing. Nothing to do with this demolition timeline or anything.
Correct. If we have a motion to approve his project, we'd be doing that.
Right.
And it doesn't,
Perhaps in part of-
he doesn't get to break ground any faster, but if he wanted to start making plans,
Got it,
he'd be able to do that.
got it.
Ford, can I just make a suggestion before somebody makes a motion? You did have a draft motion in your staff report. At a second glance, I think if somebody wanted to make a motion, I might just tweak the second condition so that it doesn't specifically say the 4-month notice period. You could just say like the notice period or the notice requirements for demolition are met and the applicant returns to the board. That way, if they are able to find a way to save the building sooner than that, they do have that option.
Did you understand?
I think so.
Okay, great. Does anyone have any further questions for the applicant about this?
Nothing's changed since the last time, and I feel like we did a pretty thorough review at the last meeting, and it met the criterion.
Todd, Jim, any questions? Is there a motion to approve the design review certificate for the new building at 48 Bow Street?
I can do that.
Great.
Proposed motion is, be it ordered that the Freeport Project Review Board approve the printed findings of fact and design review certificate for Bruce McCumber for a new barn/studio at a property at 48 Bow Street, tax assessor map 13, lot 88, to be built substantially as proposed, application dated 6/22/2023, finding that it meets the standards of Freeport Design Review Ordinance with the following conditions of approval. 1, this approval incorporates by reference all supporting plans that amend the previously approved plans submitted by the applicant and their representatives at Project Review Board meetings and hearings on the subject application to the extent that they are not in conflict with other stated conditions. 2, no building permits for this structure can be issued until such time that the demolition requirement is met. 3, the applicant obtain an applicable permit from the Freeport Codes Enforcement Officer.
Is there any discussion on the motion? Is there a second?
Second?
Roll call vote. You're abstaining, right? Hamlin,
Yes.
Madeira,
Yes.
Monteleone,
Yes.
Reiki, yes. Yankee,
Yes.
thanks for coming in.
Thank you. See you in December.
Just to clarify for the process, you would also need to table the issuance of approval to demolish it until the requirements of the ordinance are met for the existing structure.
It's not automatically tabled because we're in the 4-month period?
In the past, you've typically tabled that action so it's clear on the record. I think in this case where you issued an approval for the new structure, it would be good to just clarify they still need to come back for that demolition once they meet the requirements.
No harm in doing it that way. Is there a motion to table action on the demolition permit pending the notice requirement, 4-month notice requirement?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Your turn.
Donahue, abstain. Hamlin?
Yes.
Madeira?
Yes.
Monteleone?
Yes.
Reiki, yes. Yankee?
Yes.
Okay, so that is tabled. Caroline, can you give us your report on the Whitetail Drive subdivision? I will share with you that we had a site walk this afternoon with Hamlin, Madeira, Donahue, and Reiki present, and we came straight here. So can you give us the background?
Sure. So I feel like you'll probably have the latest and greatest information, but the application and the plans remain unchanged since the original meeting. You guys were going to do a site walk, and I think we'll want to hear from the applicant where their request for waivers stand, which you guys could act on any waivers tonight, or I think if they don't impact the layout and you need more information, you could do that at a subsequent meeting when they come back. This is a 4-lot, 8-unit subdivision. There's an existing duplex. They want to add another 3 duplexes. There's an existing road, which will require some upgrades. They did have to do some after-the-fact permitting with the DEP, which we talked about at the last meeting. Due to the size, nature of the layout and the utility connections, this is considered a minor subdivision. This would be kind of step 1, looking at the concept plan to decide if the appropriate areas have been determined for development and for open space based upon the information submitted in the site walk. If you do that, they will then start some engineering, start working with the town engineer, come back for preliminary, and then return for final approval. And I'll let Ford, you can give an update on the site walk.
And Caroline, if we have a motion, the proposed motion that's in the staff report doesn't envision any waivers, and normally those are discussed and approved as part of the concept review. We do have the right to defer consideration of those until preliminary, right?
Yeah, I think you can. If there's a case where there's a waiver that would impact the layout, you want to do that now. For example, I think you gave feedback on the road surface. That's something I'm sure the applicant will talk about. One of the waivers is possibly for culvert size, but they don't know that yet. They won't know that until they get in and start the engineering. So that makes sense to wait on that. And then with regards to underground utilities, there's a specific standard in cases when you can waive it, additional information might be required. But I think that was going to be one of the things you guys were going to look at when you were on site today. And I don't think it will overall impact the layout.
Right, thank you. Adrian, you want to give us an update?
Sure, I'm going to try and hit this button that they showed me to push, and hopefully nothing bad happens.
That was brave
All right,
and impressive.
it worked.
Brave and impressive.
So this is the same plan that we presented last time with the aerial and the proposed layout of the roadway and the driveway locations overlaid with the wetland areas, vernal pool areas, and setback area. So when we were out there on the site today, we walked, through all of these areas. So hopefully you have a little more context of now what you're looking at on a plan. So the things that I wanted to kind of address from last time and from the site walk, the biggest things are kind of clarifying those waivers. So the first waiver we had last time was about the waiving the paved surface. And so we are no longer requesting that waiver. So that one can, if it's still in your notes, that's no longer something we're requesting. The second one is about pipe size, and that's for a culvert that exists today under this driveway that is right up against where the wetlands and the vernal pool are located. And through our process of permitting with DEP, they requested that if we can leave that culvert in place, they would like us to. But it's not like a hard and fast that we absolutely have to leave it in place. But it would be better environmentally if we can. Now, the second part of that is, does that work for stormwater? Obviously, we're adding in some more impervious area. We're going to have stormwater management features, but it's a 12-inch pipe, and that may not be large enough. And so the ordinance requires it to be an 18-inch pipe. We are studying it, and when we come back for preliminary, we will know if we're going to be actually asking for that waiver to keep it as a 12-inch pipe as it is today, or if we're going to need to upsize it anyway. So that consideration is going to be something we discuss with the town engineer and look at with our stormwater design. So I don't think we want you to take any action on that waiver tonight, but we wanted you to be aware of it and get any feedback.
So you indicated that your DEP process is completed, and one of their comments is they'd like to see that minimized.
Yes, so it's less about the size of the pipe being minimized and more about the fact that the pipe already exists in place right next to a wetland, and we will be working on the road, but that's different than digging up a culvert. And so if we can avoid it, then we are, having less of an impact right next to a wetland. We're not proposing any additional wetland impacts, but it's right next to the wetland. So, but it may not be possible from a stormwater perspective. So that's why we're not asking you to take action on it until we know. And yes, our permitting process with DEP from an environmental permitting standpoint is complete. They've issued a permit, which I believe we included in our submission from the very beginning. We've had it since May, that allows for the wetland impacts that occurred for the driveway. They were minimal, but we still did an after-the-fact permit on those, and allows for the driveway being expanded into a road within that 250-foot vernal pool setback. And as I pointed out on the site walk today, we had a few areas for revegetation as part of that permit. So yeah, I think that's in your original packets, and that's been fully issued. The stormwater permit piece is reviewed by the town engineer, so we're still working on that part of our permitting. And then back to the third waiver, which I guess is now the second because the first one's gone, is the overhead electric. And I pointed out on the site walk today, the utility pole locations and overhead lines that exist today. So we're requesting a waiver to allow those to continue to exist in the final condition, and then dropping to overhead from that pole and extending underground from that last pole to the 3 new lots. And that is going to reduce our impacts to the wetlands and the vernal pool setback. One thing that we didn't really talk about, but all these poles have to have guide wires that come off of them to the ground in the same direction as where the power is going overhead. It has to be the opposite way. So that kind of restricts where you can drop a new pole, and CMP, has specific requirements for that. And I know there was mention of putting a new pole like right at the property, so that would end up being 2 new poles and a guy wire that goes down into the wetlands. It's really tight with the wetlands. And what we have now is an overhead line that comes from across the street, and it spans over all of the wetlands, past the vernal pool, past the wetlands. We don't have any poles adjacent to them, any guy wires coming down into them, no transformer pads or anything on the ground next to them. And we just have limited area in trying to reduce our impacts to the wetlands and the vernal pools. So that's our biggest reasoning. And then, secondary, all these new poles is an added cost for something that already exists today. That those power lines have been there for about 2 years. And so to then replace that is an added cost that's kind of unnecessary for them to function and then provide future power to the other 3 lots. So those are our justifications. I was reading through the minutes. I understand you might want more of like a cost analysis or something, but I'd like to get some feedback on that today as well.
I'm looking at Adam Bliss's notes, and he says utilities are required to be constructed underground as defined in the ordinance. And if this is just 2 years ago, they put in these overhead wires, does that mean this is new? Or is it specific to subdivision?
Specific to subdivision. Anyone else from the board have any questions?
On waivers in particular, or?
On anything from the applicant?
I do.
Go ahead.
So I was noticing while driving in and out today that the driveway elevations as they exist currently really feel unsafe when it comes to getting out onto Route 1 and turning south because of the low elevation and the fact of the way the Route 1 North is kind of arced. You can't see the vehicles very well. So I wasn't sure if, or at least it's not apparent in the current plans, if you're improving the grades there so that the sight lines are improved?
Yes, so we haven't submitted a grading plan yet, but today the gravel does kind of like drop off of the edge of pavement, and we would smooth that out with by bringing the gravel future paved road up to be more level with Route 1 where you're stopping instead of like sloping down off almost. And so that would make it so you have sight distance, because there is sight distance there as measured by the surveyor and DOT. But I think the current condition of how the driveway is dropping down makes it so you don't have as much sight distance. So yes, we will raise the road.
And you'll be sharing that with us at preliminary?
Yeah, we'll have the full grading plan, plan and profile, and all of the design for that.
And I assume the DEP permit prohibits you from taking the shoulders any further into the environmentally sensitive area?
Correct. Yep. We, the area that's up against Route 1 there today is a really wide apron, and so we will be decreasing that some along the wetlands, but it's still going to have, I think on our plans we already show, the radii that are required for a typical road, and so the width will be, per ordinance.
Any other questions from the applicant? Jim or Tom?
Yeah, I've got one. Actually, this is more for the board. Can you pass on any observations from your site walk?
The, there were 3 or 4 abutters there present with the applicant and with their professional, Adrian. We walked to the likely center of building location on each of the 4 lots. One of the lots is already built upon. No new issues present themselves to me. We'll ask the other board members. Nothing new presented itself to me. Nothing looked different to me than I expected. There's a question about clearing that might have been across the lot line. My observation was that there probably was a natural clearing that is adjacent to the clearing that was done on this property a couple years ago. And I think that, and that abutter expressed concerns about buffering. We can require buffering inside of the subdivision, and that'll be something we talk about.
I think one of the other things that came up, Jim, was the abutter was asking for more delineation in terms of the property lines, and the applicant agreed they'd put some more posts in to show where the property lines are as part of the process, to help that abutter out.
I think if you could do both abutters on the southwest side and the north side, it would be good.
Okay.
Anyone else?
Were there any observations about the power line, the poles?
I have some that I'm going to raise in my questions when anybody else.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just going to say that if I don't feel comfortable taking someone's word without an engineering report on the impact of the vernal pools and saying that's the primary reason for the trying to get the waiver. I think there may be some merit to that, but I'd like to get some more information on that. And up front, I think it's a cost issue, but and rightly so. But there legitimately could also be a issue for the vernal pool, trying to minimize the impact on that. There may also be other options available as well. So I'd just like to hear some discussion about that. Moving forward, it sounds like you're on that track as well.
I am when my turn comes.
You're on.
Jim,
One more item, and then I'll stay out of the way.
go for it, Jason.
Just looking at the presumed driveway turn to lot number 4, and imagining what the grade elevation of that is and the way that it turns and effectively has to go downhill, it's sort of aiming at the property to the south where the house is located. And I think that's a place where buffering ought to be considered once the land gets cleared and, with the elevation gain relative to the house and headlights coming down the hill. I just think that could be, the glare from that could be uncomfortable for current residents.
Adrian, if you know what, if you understand where that comment's directed, can you point it out on that?
Sure. Yep. It's right here.
Yes.
So but you already have a driveway crowding the wetlands. Can you put buffering inside the wetlands?
So there will be no wetland impacts, and those are forested wetlands. So naturally, we have at least 15-foot buffer over there. And then, we're not going to build right up against the wetlands. Our driveway is going to hug the other property line. So, I think that we're naturally going to leave as many trees along that property line as possible. I don't know if we would really, I guess, are you asking like if we clear 20 feet wide to build a driveway to then plant along the driveway when there's trees right next to it? Yeah.
Essentially, yes, although there's, the elevation challenge is going to be, I suppose, challenging to resolve because the car will be high and the house is down low, and it's kind of pitching in a direction toward the house in terms of the line of light. And I just think that could be one of those things where it's disruptive to people who currently live there, especially in the winter.
Yeah. There are at least 50 feet of trees there between, their cleared area and where we would be clearing. If not more. And so I guess I'm just curious as to if there is actually a view corridor through there to that house. And I understand the grade and the lights, but I'm just not sure it's going to be an area that would require buffering if it's already built up with a lot of vegetation in the woods.
I think it should be considered.
Yep.
That's the point I want to make at this moment.
Okay.
Anything else?
That's it.
Anyone in the room, on the board, have any additional questions?
Nope.
Todd or Jim, do you have any additional questions of the applicant?
None for me, Ford.
Can I say one thing about that clearing area that I didn't mention in the beginning? So after last meeting, when that question came up about the clearing along the property line, and when our survey team was out there setting those stakes, they set the stake along the property line where we all walked to and saw that there were no stumps cleared across the property line. What we were depicting on our plan is the, tree line from the aerial photo, but also, they did take a ground shot of like, this is where the tree canopy is. But that in no way indicated like, this is where they cleared to. And so I think, when we looked out there today, it was apparent that no trees were cut across the property line. All the trees that were cut were on the applicant's property. It was just the nature of the existing tree canopy and that there's naturally a clearing there. So I just, in talking with you all, I just wanted to make sure that was on the record today as well.
So I've got a couple questions. One is about your proposed waiver for utilities, but my other one is on clearing, so I'll raise that first. We don't, as you know, normally when we're looking at a piece of property that's proposed for subdivision, it has not already been cleared. And this property in one spot has been cleared to the property line, even though it may not have been actively cleared beyond. And it happens to be at a point where one of the closest abutters lives. It appears to me to be deciduous trees all the way to her house. So when you bring us, I'd ask you, when you bring in the preliminary plan, if you could propose appropriate buffering on your side of the property line there, it will be an issue I'll raise at that time.
Okay.
So, Caroline, looking at the requirement for utilities and what we can and can't waive, and Adrian, I know you know the ordinance, but the subdivision ordinance says that underground utilities are required. We can waive, but then there's only a specific reason we can waive. So my question to Caroline is, I don't know that we can waive for any reason other than the stated reason. And the stated reason is that you have to establish that costs to go underground will raise the cost of housing in this subdivision above market in that part of town.
Okay.
Caroline will speak up if I've interpreted this incorrectly, but I think it goes back to you to explain to us why this takes the economic needle above developing other lots there, and maybe with the environmental compliance, this is what does it for you.
Yeah, I mean, if we get into wetland impacts or further vernal pool impacts, there's compensation fees with DEP, or they won't allow it. So it would essentially mean, the project can't happen. Our permit doesn't allow for further impacts to the significant vernal pool setback or the pool itself. And we would have to go back and request if we're going to impact wetlands anymore. Right now, our permit is based on not having any. So, yeah, that does add fees. And if we are required to go underground and the pole has to be, and the guy wires have to be, and the transformer has to be like in a wetland, that's a wetland of special significance over there. So, yeah, there's fees. I don't know the compensation fees off the top of my head, but they're pretty steep.
I guess my point is
So I don't have like a cost estimate in front of me, but that definitely is a factor on top of just, poles.
Right. I guess my point is that's math that you need to do to bring to us for us to consider it. Does that make sense?
Yes, okay.
Ford, I just want to clarify one thing there. One thing the ordinance doesn't address is a situation where it's kind of after the fact for lot one. So all the new subdivision utilities, I clearly hear them saying, are going to be underground. So I think let's give the applicant a chance to respond to the cost, and we'll kind of go through the ordinance and look a little closer with them. My understanding from talking to them is that the utilities above are underground. I mean, it impacts the plan, but not the layout of the plan. But I do think, we should look a little closer at that standard, have them give information, then look at the standard, because again, it is silent on the existing utilities. And they did start this project outside of subdivision and then had to change due to, the number of units they were going to create. And then before you guys wrap up, I do want to bounce back when the time's right to a comment that Jason made about site distance, but you can tell me when you want to hear that.
Okay, I just want to beat on this a little bit more. You understand what you have to do.
Yep.
Can you explain to me why, when we were on site, I was running, why wouldn't you run another pole where this driveway meets Old Route 1, and then just trench in the road that you're going to build all underground in place?
So, and when I come back with the information, I can provide like a plan or a diagram of what that would look like. But, and I can point it out in a second here, but it essentially, in order to put a pole where you're saying where the driveway intersects with Route 1 today, it has to be on our property, not within the Route 1 right-of-way. That's a CMP requirement. And
Is that 25 feet from the middle of the road?
it's probably 33 here. Yeah, because it's probably a 66-foot wide right-of-way for the state road. And then, so you have to set a pole there. There's no pole currently directly across the street from that. So you would have to set a pole directly across the street too, which is really close to a pole on the other side of the road already. So, we'd have to work out with CMP what they would allow. So we'd either have to do that, or we'd have to go from the pole they're going from currently, but put a guy wire in a different direction onto somebody else's property over there. So it gets into just more added poles, added guy wires than what's already there. Plus, when we set the pole on our side, on our property, we don't have a wire extending overhead from that up the road, so you have to have a guy wire, and that is definitely going to go down into the wetlands if you put the pole there. I'm not sure if there is a location along the frontage where you could put a pole and the guy wire wouldn't go into the wetlands.
Well, help us understand why it's too expensive according to the standard, and that may, and impractical, and
Yep.
we'll consider, I don't think we can consider your requested waiver as a condition of site, concept review.
Yeah, and if you're all right with, putting that item off to preliminary, we'll provide that information to you. Does that sound reasonable to you as well, Michelle, to give them the information for next time and have the waiver finalized next time, either way?
I mean, I can get you costs, I can't give you the cost, but you could probably.
Yeah, I can get those.
But the
Yep.
others, yeah, I can.
Okay. And I'll just point out on the plan really quickly, like where that pole was we were talking about. So this is an existing pole. The proposed would have to be on the other side of this road and come across here. This is all wetlands. The guy wire would have to be like into the wetlands here. Whereas today, we're just going over all that to a pole over here that's not right next to the wetlands.
You're proposing to go underground at that pole?
We would go from, so this is still our 250-foot setback, so we can't really put a transformer here. But the other pole's here, and we could. And that's the last pole where it is today. It already has a guy wire. All of those additional, requirements for anchoring, angles, and all of that for CMP have already been met.
Caroline, we're going to ask the public for comment in a second, but what did you have?
So again, I do want to look at that standard a little closer with Adrian because it's not clear for existing, and at least get some information from her to understand the financial and environmental impacts and whether or not that's something the board could allow to exist. But since you're not going to act on it tonight, I think I have the ability to work with her if she pulls together some information. And I just wanted to go back to a question that Jason raised about site distance. So although they do need a driveway entrance permit from others, if it's from the state, I'm not sure if the state will require a change of use. The municipality for entrances under our regulation do require change of uses for subdivision, but there are also typically more stringent standards for site distance in the subdivision ordinance that the board, the applicant will need to look at and demonstrate that they meet. And if they don't meet them, request some kind of relief from the board, which is all outlined. I just wanted to note that there is a second set of site distance standards that need to be considered for the entrance.
Thanks, Caroline. Lynn?
Can someone explain why there's this requirement for them, for subdivisions, for them to go underground? Is it aesthetics? Is it, I mean, why is this an ordinance where obviously historically it wasn't, because we've got wires going all over our heads? Is that?
I was just going to ask the same question. What's the intent of this?
Well, this has been.
I don't know the origin here.
What did you say, Caroline?
I don't know the origin. It's been in the ordinance since I came to Freeport.
Yeah, it's the ordinance in every town I can think of. It's preferred.
Well, because the fact that high overhead wires exist and today have no impact on the vernal pool or the wetlands on the other side, and then you propose dropping it and going underground as you approach the subdivision. I guess my question is it, what is the intent? And the fact that that process would happen long before you get to the first driveway or in front of the existing house seems commonsensical that makes sense to me. But I would need to know what the problem is.
Don't know. I mean, the history of it might be that lots of times subdivision roads remain private, and you've got a public utility on a private road, and it might just be less maintenance if they're underground, but I don't know. But it's been like that since the 80s, as far as I know.
Is it possible to, and maybe this has already been discussed and I wasn't picking up on it, but to put the underground at the first pole? It looks like as the driveway turns in, there's a pole on the right side of the driveway. It looks like on the downhill side of the driveway, to put the transformer there, and then to trench up from there. That's outside of the vernal pool, it looks like.
Yeah, it's still within our 250-foot setback of the vernal pool. We can look at, how many impacts there would be, like what is required, but typically, you need to have some infrastructure on the ground. So that would not be allowed in that setback area by our DEP permit.
You have to have the transformer at the point of drop or where it serves a house?
It just depends on a lot of factors. Cost is one of them. And CMP kind of rules the roost and tells you what to do without you getting like a lot of say. Environmental permitting might be one way to try and dictate to CMP what we want, but.
That's a question I have too. And again, we want to help you, but we can't just waive this without meeting the requirements.
Yeah, no, understood. We just, and I don't have all of those answers for you today, so we will prepare that information for next time and get, some figures and some numbers together.
If you can go into conduit, if you can go in the first pole that's on the road, go into conduit and go straight underground without additional guy wires, I'd ask the same question.
We would still need an additional guy wire because it would be, I guess another question back to you is, are you asking that so if we were to do that, if we were to go underground there, what happens to the house that's currently served? There's currently an overhead line from that pole to another pole that has a transformer on it for a single duplex, and overhead from that pole to the duplex and a guy wire. So you're asking that we take existing infrastructure that was allowed for a duplex with a building permit and removing it?
I think
That's an added cost as well.
Well, that works in your favor in asking for the waiver, and I think
Okay.
I think that's the point Caroline's making.
Okay.
Any other
But
questions?
that would be like, I guess you're saying that that's what we would have to do, is remove it all. If we're not technically supposed to have overhead, and if we don't get the waiver, we have to remove all of
Or
that.
work with Caroline. It may be that because you've got that in place, that
Yeah.
the subdivision requirements start at where the new work goes.
Yeah, okay, yeah, we'll do so.
Any other questions from members of the board? This is not a public hearing, but we welcome members of the public if they've got any comments. Yeah, introduce yourself and tell us your address when you go to the mic.
Yep, it's up.
Thanks. My name is Stephen Taylor, 1469 US Route 1, which is right over there. First thing is the driveway. They're talking about 18-foot with 2-foot shoulders. When they cleared that lot, they said they kept 10 feet off the property line. And they're saying they need to slide it over to get it out of a little bit more out of the wetland as far as road work. And if you move it over 2 feet, you need a ditch. All of a sudden you're crowding. So like you mentioned, it would be helpful to have the property line well-defined during construction. Because when they put in the house, they kind of taped off 10 feet. So it seems to put 6 more families in there seems to be a little heavy. Septic systems, wells, where they are. Most of the runoff from this will either go in front of my house or behind it. But the folks at 1495 out in front on Route 1. A lot of that may come down over the hill depending on where things are. Lighting. It was a little shocking to have the street light come up. I don't have to use a flashlight or a Coleman lantern to throw wood in my wood window on the backside of my house in the wintertime. No, boom, there it is. So I don't know how much more lighting they may put in, but I know the Blanchetts are worried about it, and it's already been mentioned as far as the fourth lot. I think that's it for now. I did send you guys a letter last month, and I think most of the things were brought up at that meeting, so thank you.
Thank you. Some of the issues you've raised, I think all of them are items that we have to go through as under the review standards. What are you proposing to do? You have to go back to the mic to answer this, but what are you proposing to do for domestic water assurance if you're going on wells?
For domestic water what?
Assurance. You have to assure the lot buyer that there's water.
Yes, so that was something we talked about with Caroline at the very beginning, and the current well was like a pretty high flow rate. So we're not concerned with water, and I think it was something that was going to be written into the homeowners association. Yeah.
Just acquaint yourself with the ordinance requirements.
Yeah. Caroline mentioned that to us early on in the process as well.
Any other members of the public have any questions?
We do have someone online, but not a raised hand, so I'm not sure what the protocol is if we need to.
Caroline, we have someone online. How do we ask them if they want to ask a question?
If you are attending online and you want to raise a question, you can just raise your virtual hand and we'll promote you to panelist. I only see one person. You have a Samsung device on here. So if you want to comment, just raise your hand and we'll bring you over. Hand is up, so I will promote them so that they can talk.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hear you.
This is Jen Blanchett. Sorry, I couldn't change my name on the thing for some reason on my phone. So I think everything was addressed. I didn't know if it's possible that street light might come down at some point, but I just wanted it noted if it's at all possible for the board to consider that and not put any more in. I wasn't able to catch all of the meeting, but that's the only thing I had for right now. I'll check the minutes out.
Thank you. You'll have lighting.
Thank you.
You'll have lighting on the plan when you propose it.
Yes. Yeah, all of the proposed features, stormwater, utilities, lighting, grading, everything will be in our full design submission on all of the plans.
To the extent you can do cutoff lighting or anything that minimizes the impact on neighbors, you're going to.
Yeah, any proposed lighting would be cutoff lighting.
And what you have there now, it sounds like it isn't?
It technically is, I believe it's a Cobra headlight, which is a standard CMP pole-mounted light, which is a cutoff light, but it is, it looks like it's mounted pretty high.
So you can do it for the neighbors on that?
Yeah. I mean, it's.
And then for just one other thing, sorry, can you hear me?
Yes?
Yep.
And for property line, that's marked so we can kind of see the buffering for future. I think it was discussed.
Yeah.
That was discussed, yeah.
Yep. Yeah, we're planning to mark that property line.
And can you mark it
Thank
soon?
you.
Yeah, we're going to get to it as soon as possible.
Yeah.
Yes, you do. Okay.
Yeah, I think if you can, it just gives the abutters time to raise concerns.
Yep, definitely.
Okay, any other questions? Is there, so the applicant is before us for concept review. The requirements for us to approve concept, get to concept approval are pretty simple. Caroline, why don't you remind us again what the three standards are that we need to be satisfied in order to entertain this motion?
So in the staff report, you should have a motion with the draft finding that you would need to make.
Inventory map, site
Site-
analysis.
Is
Conceptual plan.
is the board ready to make a motion?
Sure. I'd like to make a motion that be it ordered that the Freeport Project Review Board finds that the review of the site inventory map, site analysis, and conceptual plan for the proposed Whitetail subdivision is considered complete, as the board finds that based upon the information presented and the plan dated November 14th, 2022, that the appropriate areas have been determined for development and for conservation or open space.
Is there a second?
Second that.
Is there any discussion? Jim?
Or I just note before I vote that, I certainly intend on voting in support of this concept plan, but I'd emphasize, in addition to what has already been said, that the approval of the concept plan at this stage is in no way a reflection about where we stand on the waivers. Considerable additional information is needed for these waivers, and in essence, that's not part of our approval of the concept layout whatsoever. So I just want to make sure that that's really clear to the applicant that, we're just starting that conversation. But in terms of the site layout, I believe that this looks good and meets the standards of a concept plan.
Thank you. Any other comments? Roll call vote. Donahue?
Yes.
Hamlin?
Yes.
Madeira?
Yes.
Monteleone?
Yes.
Reiki, yes. Yankee?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next agenda item is discussion of the rules of order. Caroline, we're not really in a position to dig into those tonight, is that correct?
Yeah, we're not in a position to dig into that tonight. So when I can get back into the past discussion and give you an update, I will do that. So if you have another short agenda, it will magically reappear when we're ready.
Sorry.
And I know Linda wanted to be here for the discussion too.
Okay, great. Is there any other business to come before the Project Review Board before we entertain a motion to adjourn? Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Donahue?
Yes.
Hamlin?
Yes.
Madeira?
Yes.
Monteleone?
Yes.
Reiki, yes. Yankee?
Yes.
Got it. Very good.
Good luck, everybody.
Thank you.
Good night. Todd, you doing okay?
Doing very well today. Yes, thank you.
Great.
Recording stopped.
Okay.
Good night, everyone.
Night, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
That was refreshing.
Yeah, Todd, yeah. The record is 17 minutes.